Yo, this is Caesar Walker, the cool, calm, collected one.
And I'm Ronnie Gatrey, the emotional one.
And we are the Tipping Point Podcast, your source for sophisticated ignorance, intellectual stupidity, and well-articulated nonsense.
Walker! We finna cook!
Walker, can you come to our game?
I think this is the tipping point.
Peace and blessings, beloveds. We want to thank you guys for tuning in for another week of our podcast. Shout out to all of our listeners. We want to highlight our long-term listeners as well as first-time listeners. And if you are listening to us for the first time and you're enjoying the podcast, you're enjoying this intellectual stupidity, we want you to do us a favor. We want you to follow us, subscribe to us on whatever streaming platform that you're choosing to stream this podcast from. Also, we want you to follow us on the social media, subscribe to our YouTube page. All of that information can be found on our website that we own, Gatrey. That website is
thetippingpoint.com. That's THA, tippingpoint.com.
And with that, let's begin episode 86.
86, Walker.
Before we even get into our pleasantries with each other, checking in with us and how we're doing, we want to acknowledge a few people. Most notable, we're recording on a Sunday. Last week, we received word that John Lewis, civil rights leader, activist, was on the forefront fighting for equality, voting rights, for Black people and all people. He passed at the age of 80 after a bout with cancer. He was also a congressman and was really dedicated to continuing the work that was started by amazing leaders such as Dr. Martin Luther King. Gatrey, your thoughts about this guy, man?
Man, John Lewis's roots to Alabama kind of brought him to the church where I grew up in, and he would show up for certain events and things like that. And I'll be honest, Walker, as a youth, knuckleheaded youth, I didn't really appreciate the value that this man possessed at the time. But as I matured and started to know more about what this man stood for, I started to value some of those times, and I got some flashbacks and some memories back to those days. But one thing, Walker, as I've been reading a lot about this man's life, nothing against everything he did for civil rights. I had no idea how plugged in he was in terms of rights for LGBTQ. I had no idea, how many times he spoke in support of this effort, and on top of civil rights for people of color like you and I. So I was shocked because again, I had no idea, but just it just goes to show just how well-rounded of an individual this was and how great pioneer and hero of the United States that John Lewis was. So yeah, those are my thoughts. What you got, man?
Well said. And of course he was a son of Alabama. He's ours, of course. There is a actual masterclass that Oprah did with John Lewis. And it was playing this morning. I think it was on social media, and you can find it on YouTube if you don't have the home network. But it was just awesome, just doing chronologizing, his life and just showing where he came from. Like he would grow up preaching as a kid because he grew up on a farm, and he grew up preaching to chickens. And his whole thing was like, even at a young age, you could see his compassion and his regard for life. Mm-hmm. Right. And it started with, and he would talk about how he would preach, and it was amazing. Like the chickens would never say amen. They would never do anything, say anything audibly, but it almost felt like they were listening more to him than members of Congress actually listen to him today. Ooh. And I was like, that was a very, just listening to where he came from. And it just talks about how inspired he was and to do the sit-ins in the restaurants and how that was. And just the mental strength it was to sit there and be cursed at, spat on, had hot coffee poured on you, people kicking you, punching you, and to not hit back and the whole purpose of it is like the true strength was not fighting back, but to show people who were on the fence, on the sidelines, that we have an issue here, and to see people to show that great strength and restraint, yet you're putting on full display the oppression, is what really motivated a lot of people across the country to take action against what was happening back then in the 60s. And so 50s and 60s. And so, one of the greatest quotes, man, is, and of course there's a tweet, but he said it since then: do not get lost in the sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is a struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. And basically, that's basically what his whole life has been about. When it's something worth fighting for, when you're fighting for the greater good of humanity, getting into good trouble is necessary and it's required to bring about change. So we just want to thank John Lewis for dedicating his life on behalf of those who've been oppressed, those who have been marginalized. And today we love to celebrate you, and we honor your life and legacy by continuing the fight that you started and helped start so long ago. And we'll make sure we honor you by doing our part and doing what we can to see that mission comes to pass, and that dream of Dr. Martin Luther King is realized. That's all I got, man.
Very well put, sir. Is that why you always let me go first?
What do you mean?
Because you're gonna slam the door usually. In a good way.
You let me slam the door, dude.
Okay.
You let me slam the door. Also, too, I don't know if you were familiar. Reverend C.T. Vivian also passed on this. Was it the same day?
Same day, Walker. Goodness.
And he was 95. He actually died like he wasn't sick or anything, but was well in his old age. And also was I didn't know how involved he was, man, but he was kind of like, he would go down, he would be sent. As a matter of fact, I think Dr. Martin Luther King referred to him as one of the greatest preachers he's ever heard speak. Oh, wow. Which is high praise coming from someone like Dr. Martin Luther King. And right. So, just to see his involvement and how he would go down, he would visit areas to just see what was going on. And, it was, he played a very vital role. So we want to, our thoughts and prayers are with the family of Reverend C.T. Vivian as well. Just like John Lewis. And again, you just want to just acknowledge those guys at that time. I got a few more if you want me to get into it, since we're already here. Our thoughts and prayers are with Naya Rivera. We talked about her last week. At the time, her body had not been found. She was presumed dead at the time of our recording last week, but her body, I think maybe a day or so later, had been found. And apparently, I don't know if it was a current or something that happened, but she was able to save her son, I believe is what happened, but didn't have enough strength to get back in the boat. So, our thoughts and prayers are definitely with the family, friends, people who have worked alongside her. I didn't realize how long she had been in entertainment. I didn't realize she was on Family Matters.
Oh, goodness. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and actually, like I saw clips of it on social media. You remember Lil Richie, the youngest on that show? Like, she was a girl who, she was like his age and was like a friend of a neighbor or someone who stopped by, and her and Little Richie was like, she had a lot of personality then.
Wow.
And so, she's been in shows, like she's been in entertainment and acting for like her whole life, just about.
Okay.
Wow. So, but yeah, man, just a long career, life cut too short. Our prayers are with her son, her ex-husband, friends, family, the whole nine. We hate to hear that. But yeah, our thoughts and prayers are with them. Tamar Braxton, pretty sure you heard of her this past week. She was rushed to the hospital as what they felt was a failed attempt on her life. She had been going through a lot family had spoken out, and the family is they're just asking that we keep her lifted up in prayer, which we can definitely do. Tamar was definitely one of the bigger personalities of that entire family, and definitely just entertaining to see her in her element. Whatever, again, this is some challenging times, man, just what we're seeing people deal with. And we've been seeing death on all accounts, whether it's old age, whether it's what we've seen, with the George Floyds, the Breonna Taylors, the Ahmaud Arbery's, with people dying of sickness with COVID, John Lewis with cancer. Like we've been exposed to a lot of death. So, man, yeah, I just pray for, I lift up the Braxton family, most definitely, but I just pray for us as well, man. Like, this is a lot that we're dealing with at one time, and it can kind of wear on you, especially when you got to deal with your own regular everyday stuff. Like Tamar was probably dealing with, and it can be taxing. It can be a lot, You know what I mean? And so check on your friends. If you got friends you haven't talked to in a while, it's important to check on them. Give them a call. Let them know you're thinking about them, man. Let them know that, you haven't forgotten about them. Like, check on your people. And, we need each other during this time to get through it. So that's all I got, Gat. I don't know if you had anything to say about it.
No,